Hello and happy Halloween! Today our Mammal Monday is Halloween themed, so guess it.
Look it! It's freaking bats. I love Halloween.
Today we're going to be talking about Chiroptera, so the order of bats. So speaking about taxonomy of bats, there's 21 families, about 174 genera, and then over or around 1,400 species, which is insane. This is about 22% of all mammals, and historically they were subdivided into two main groups. You can see a good illustration, if I can move my thing, a good illustration of Yangochiroptera and Yangochiroptera, but in modern day we refer to them as Megachiroptera and Microchiroptera. So Megachiroptera is old world fruit bats. They're also known as flying foxes. And then Microchiroptera, which contains the smallest of all bat species, which I'll talk about in a second, but essentially contains any bat that's not a fruit bat. And then yin and yang, you can see old world bats only and new and old world. I believe that Yinpterochiroptera, good night, that is a long word. I believe that has six different families. And then the Yangochiroptera has 15. Yes, the math is mathing. Next up, speaking about habitat and distribution, they do live all over the world in tropical and temperate habitats. The only place that they're not in is the polar regions and a couple of isolated islands here and there. They're pretty common in temperate regions, but you're going to see the greatest diversity in the species in all the tropical forests, which is pretty common among animals. They forage near fresh water. This is because they eat the insects that come out of the water, and they usually have pretty specific roosting requirements. So some of them might require specifically a cave, versus some of them want logs or trees. And some of them even have different types of roosts at different times. So some that might hibernate in caves during the winter might want trees during warmer climate or warmer months. So speaking of morphology, their wings are just modified forelimbs, which is super different from bird wings because it's called a patagia. The wings are covered with the skin and supported by 4 different fingers. And I'll speak about it a little more in my flight slide, but the 4 fingers allow for super precise movement that allow them to fly so precisely and be able to catch prey. So their fur color varies between different species, and because there's so many different species, these are just some of the most common ones. They're usually brown or black with a paler undercoat, or they can be pale orange, which is seen in Schneider's leaf-nosed bat, which you can see in this image right here. So that pale orange is really pretty, but some bats also display colored patches, and I'll also move my thing so you can see this. Colored patches, stripes, frosted tips, so they have a lot of different morphological fur differences. Also, the females tend to be larger than the males, which is interesting, a sexual dimorphism. Speaking more about morphology, here I'll put myself up here, they usually have a tail membrane, which is called a uropatagium. They have really big chest and shoulders, which actually allows for the center of gravity to be between the wings, which helps in their flying. They have a smaller posterior end, which you can imagine also helps with flying. Their hind limbs are usually pretty short, pretty small. They're not they don't need to be longer. They also have sharp curved claws that help them cling to the surfaces of whatever they're roosting on. And Megachiropterans usually rely on vision to orient in the dark, so they have bigger eyes compared to Microchiropterans, which rely on echolocation and not as much vision, so they have smaller eyes. So talking about flight, like I said earlier, in order to accommodate powerful flight, their thoracic region, so their anterior front ends, their breast region is super muscular. They have very specific, specialized muscles there. It's very robust. They also have vertebral fusion, and the physics of flight for them. And this happens for planes and anything else that flies, but essentially According to Bernoulli's principle, there's a pressure differential created because when fluid's moving faster, they're inverse. So one increases in fluid and pressure increases, or fluid and speed, which creates this pressure differential. So the higher pressure, which forms under the wing, creates the lift, and they can adjust their angle of attack, which is like at what direction the wings are hitting the air. They can use precise finger movements. They can adjust the camber, which is like this versus that of the wing, and all of these different things coming together allow them to fly very well. So speaking about their reproduction, this is such a cute picture. You can see the little baby bat. They have a low fecundity. That pronunciations. They typically have like one litter a year with only like 1 to 2 young, which is compared to say like rabbits or other mammals is pretty low. They practice internal fertilization and they give birth to live young. And in fruit bats, females don't usually have their first litter until they're about like 2 years old. And another fun fact, during birth, the female hangs upside down by her thumbs and then closes her wings to protect her newborn from falling, which is really such an interesting thing to think about. And then the infant clings to its mother and guided to like the nearest teat because they nurse as their mammals, which is just so weird because they are the only flying mammal. Some natural history about them. Some of them hibernate, not all of them, and they echolocate, which they make noises from their nose region, and they make up for something called Doppler shift, which is if you think about when a car goes by you really fast or something's falling, the pitch changes. They have to make up for these small like nuances in like their hearing. But echolocation, they're able to use ultrasound, which is a higher frequency, so they get more precise like visions, images. It's not necessarily an image, but like they get a more precise read of what the prey, how big the prey is, where it is, which helps them to catch and be more efficient at feeding. They have long lifespans, which means that they're really the only group of mammals that don't conform to the normal, like smaller animals and shorter lifespan trend, because most do. They usually live for like 30 years. I think the highest recorded age was like 41. And there's a couple different like thoughts as to why they live so long, but hibernation and daily torpor, which is where metabolism and like body temperature lowers, restricts lifetime energy expenditure and allows them to live longer compared to like smaller like rodents or other like mammals that are just going all the time. They also use ultrasound for echolocation. Like I just said, it's more precise. They usually roost in colonies for a certain portion of the year, and this helps to conserve heat, which is really important for them. Which you can see this picture is really interesting. They're in that colony in the cave. So a couple fun facts. The smallest bat species is held by Kitty's hognose bat, which is this picture right here. It's so cute. It's so small. Over 300 species of fruit depend on bats for pollination. So like bananas, avocados, and mangoes. If we didn't have bats, we wouldn't have those pollinators. And we have to say goodbye to some amazing fruits. And like cats, they clean themselves, which is not only a cleanliness thing, but it helps with parasites. And they also have an incredibly strong cardiovascular system, because not only does it have to be able to efficiently help them fly, but it has to be able to keep blood moving strongly even when they're upside down. And here are some of my sources. Thank you for coming. Stay tuned for Furry Friday, and I hope everybody has a great